And I think that's why things like Bendy Brewski was so successful, and like things, you know, even David Drake's place like is so approachable that compared to people that wouldn't go to like Hilo or the Works because they feel like they don't fit in with that image.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll approach it in a different setting.
They're like, James Allen Yoga, I can't do that. That's like crazy vinyasa.
Right?
I hear that.
Yeah. But when I ran Ohm Outdoors and we had donation-based classes at Pitt Street Bridge and on the beach, it was like everyone was welcome. If you could pay, great. If you couldn't, it was okay. And like also you were outside. Like it wasn't, you didn't have to look a certain way or be a certain way. At the end of the day, you were just having a good time, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. But
there's so many different ways to, you know, be a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different ways.
Well, I think on that note, it's...
Are we recording
fitness...
now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is going. This is how it's going to open up.
Sweet.
In general, I think a lot of fitness, just gyms and workout centers, yoga studios, come with that notion that we must act and be and look a certain way.
Yeah.
And it's just an assumption, right? They just assume that everybody who goes to a kettlebell gym is just this animal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that before they come to Drake Fitness. And then they come inside and they're like, wait, hold on.
They're like, wait, I could be in a wheelchair and get a great workout at Drake Fitness.
Exactly. Yeah.
People don't realize that. It's like, I could come straight out of surgery the day before and get some of the best.
Yeah, we'll move you.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't have to gas myself out, too.
Yeah.
Like, I always appreciated that it wasn't about, like, okay, like, everything you got has to get out. But you still left, like, strong and, like...
It's come to some of my classes. They're like that.
Maybe,
yeah. Wait, hold on.
maybe there are some days, but
well, I mean, it's just where's everybody at right now? You know, that's why we also don't always have, like, we have a general structure and ideology and approach.
Yeah.
But it's, how is everybody feeling? Oh, this person, I didn't sleep last night. And generally when one person doesn't sleep, everybody doesn't sleep for some reason.
Oh, that's funny.
It's interesting.
Okay.
But then we readdress, like, it's like, what kind of output do we have? Or
Yeah.
we're not going to swing the heaviest bell that we can swing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I think that's what's so great about, honestly, I guess I see it in all three of our, how the three of us individually run our classes. Like with you, you're like reading, you like talk to everyone that comes into class and you're like feeling it out and like you'll adjust what your plan was for your class.
Yeah.
Based off of like the energy.
Yeah, well, because you have to. Otherwise, you're
yeah,
like kind of like metaphorically smacking your students in the face. And
yeah.
How do they leave that way? You know, like when you take a class, and you know, I think there's a balance to like challenging your edge, that edge of discomfort, and also creating something that's accessible.
Yeah,
I want you to be uncomfortable, but also feel like you're somewhere on that path if you're not where you're trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you take a class and you're like, that is not at all for me, I don't know how I'm going to get there. Yeah. It's immediately off-putting, and I think sometimes your students can shut down.
Yeah. And there's ways to grade it too.
Yes.
You know, you can still keep your schedule of like, all right, we're going to do handstands, we're going to hold it, but like, you know, I'm sure I haven't experienced your yoga class yet. So.
I know.
Oh, you gotta check it out.
We'll have to. That should have been that'll be a homework assignment for like the next week or two. Okay. I have to get over there, and yes, you'll have to step into our class one day.
Yeah, what got you started? Why yoga?
When do you guys remember on like the iPods, like the old school ones with the dial?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I used to do, I was running track and field. I had a lot of like Achilles pain, and it was getting to be like really problematic. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing yoga with Chaz, and it was him in his like living room stretching on the ground. And then from there.
It was like YouTube?
It was like an Apple podcast way back. It was like on my little iPod.
Oh, so on like the little
you had your dial. Yeah, I had to download it.
I didn't realize it was okay.
No,
this is old school.
I'm older than I look.
You're one of the OGs.
I'm pretty sure we're all the same age here.
I think we're actually very close, but yeah, I did that, and then my parents got me a pass to the yoga studio in town, and then my parents went through this messy divorce. My dad was having some health issues and personal stuff, and I kept coming back to yoga, and it was like my safe space. And over the course of my life, it's been a safe space for different reasons.
Yeah.
Like in different relationships, and my like sense of spirituality. And so it's just always been there. And then opportunities came from it, like the connection and like, the confidence to do things, the motivation to do things, running. I did teacher training, which they say yoga teacher training will ruin your life. Because, like, you're all of a sudden looking at things and you're like, oh, wait, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, why have I always done this?
Yeah, and
wait,
like,
I can make my own choices.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, if it doesn't feel right, I don't have to stay.
Yeah.
And so then I ran a small business, and then it gave me confidence to go to grad school, and then grad school connected me with a job where I can use yoga and breathing and regulation and all of it. So it just has always been a safe place, but a place of opportunity. Yeah. Plus, it's like a good time. You get a great teacher. You get your routine, your community. Like, yeah.
You meet some great people. So wait, when did you start practicing yoga?
I was probably like 14. Like, I was running track.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was pole vaulting too.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Pole
That's
vaulting.
impressive.
Pole vaulting's got to be like one of the most athletic things you can do.
I
don't know, did you get over the bar?
Yeah, all I had to do was clear the bar. Like, let's be real, I wasn't.
That's tough, though.
All I had to do was clear the bar to
Yeah.
like place for points, but
Put the toothpick in there and
yes,
get up.
Yeah, but I didn't have to run as much, and I was having all this problems with my Achilles and my ankle and my calves,
Yeah.
and I was constantly in pain. And then yoga was like, my parents, I guess they noticed me doing it on my iPod or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was when their divorce was very like messy and tough, and so I kept going to yoga, and I'd feel better when I'd go, and I was like, this is cool. I kind of needed that, I leaned into it. So I've been practicing probably since I was 13, so like almost 20 years, and then teaching like 8 years. So
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
It's interesting how, these modalities, we're just drawn to them, and they help us bridge that gap of whatever we're going through. So Achilles pain,
Yeah.
The family stuff,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, I was in a relationship, and it was like he was a different religion than my family was.
At 13?
Huh?
No.
When I was 13? Yeah. I was going right into a cult at that point. But, when I think about too what yoga was for me, it was like, I felt like my family had their opinions. The man I was dating had his perspective. And then yoga was my like private safe space where it was like I connected with myself, but I felt a connection with God in a way that I didn't have to call it anything. And it helped me figure out a path through that too,
Yeah.
And it was every time I dropped in child's pose, I could like feel my breath. I could feel my body. I could feel whether I was in pain or like joy. And then I could figure out the stuff in my head. So it's like through the body to the mind.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's the science of the self.
It's crazy.
I feel like it's always like one pose, or I don't know, for me it's always been like, there's like a single pose that I'm always
What's
going
your-
back to. Well, for me it's the headstand.
Yes.
Right now
okay.
it's the headstand. But it's been child's pose sometimes, yeah.
In the sense of like, it's supposed you
Like,
come
this
back
is-
to of like,
This is where I feel the most presence and
Yeah.
connection
Yeah.
to self or source or God or whatever that is.
yeah. Is it the same for you with kettlebell work and like weight training or?
Yeah, the swing.
I think, the swing. Well, this brings up a deeper thought process in my mind
Cool.
of how the body stores trauma and how also how we present ourselves, our thought processes go through, like thoughts equal words equals deeds, right? So how my body language is says a lot about where my thought process is at, right?
Yeah, it can.
So if someone's pushing a lot and they're here a lot, that tells me a lot about no. No is a big word in their life. I mean, obviously that's not always exactly the case,
Sure.
right? A big chest up and pulling and loving pulling is like, oh, yes.
Okay.
And that's a lot of yes. I know
Cool.
people
Cow.
who say no a lot like to pull a lot because they want to say yes more. I believe.
Okay. Okay, cool.
That's what was kind of running through my mind
Yeah.
with, with these poses. Like,
Yeah.
you know, a headstand. You brought up the
Yeah, what does that
presence.
say about me?
I don't know. I just think it's. I think with yoga, this is my. I have no training. I have nothing with yoga, but for me, I feel yoga requires a big connection with your internal environment because it is not an external activity.
Yeah.
So like kettlebells, like I love throwing around heavy kettlebells and stuff because it's like this external. I can control something outside of me and also make it become a part of me. That requires a level of, proprioception, obviously, in an internal environment. But the level of like, I don't feel like you talked about child pose of like it basically being a safe space for you.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that experience.
That's a really good.
I don't think I've ever had that experience with.
That's a really good
training.
point.
The gym itself can maybe be a safe space.
Yeah.
But not like I can be anywhere and doing this thing and feel like I'm in a safe space within the movement.
But do you, I guess, okay, if we change the word from safe space, but like it's the moment of connection where you're like, it's like, aha, there it is, I see it. But where it's like you're moving through certain, like whether it's you're picking up a heavier kettlebell or you're like swinging in a certain direction or you're like in a low plank or something and you're holding longer, do you have those moments where it's like, okay, there it is.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm in it, I understand, I see. So,
yes.
yeah.
But that has primarily come with rope flow and like
Oh, really?
kettlebell flow.
The rope.
Yeah. The rope and the kettlebell flow. Not like actual strength training with the kettlebell, but like if I throw it and spin the kettlebell and catch it, like
nope.
It's easier than you think.
Immediately, I'm like, oh, my dentist.
I worry more about the fingers actually, because I get my
Really?
fingers caught in
Honestly,
between the handle and the belt as it's spinning and like.
Yeah, fingers and toes
Okay.
maybe.
So, what do you think it is about rope flow? Because there's rhythmic pieces. There's what I appreciate about the vinyasa, the breath to movement. The more I link breath body movement, the more I drop out of like the spinning thoughts into the movement, and there's
state.
like the flow state.
That's what the rope is a flow. It's
So the flow.
state.
Okay.
And it's kind of like.
I should always come back to rope flow. I feel like every time we do this, it's always rope flow.
But I think
because
that's...
rope flow. I think it's like the same thing that you're talking about with vinyasa flow.
Yeah, I think too though when you talk like how we were talking about classes in non-traditional yoga and gym settings that open the opportunity for someone to step into that rope flows like that is like, okay, I know plenty of people that are like, absolutely not, I will not be stepping into a yoga class, but might take something like a rope flow where they're like, wait, this is strength building, where they can get into that same state. Might be like the opportunity for them to start to come into that space.
I found that the rope has the ability to like bring people into the present moment in the flow state quicker than anything that I've found so far.
Yeah, I was talking to my buddy Ed, and he knows of this girl, which might be the only research being done on rope flow, where she was testing herself dropping into meditation versus herself going into rope flow.
Yeah.
And what is it, theta and the beta?
Yeah, theta,
the brainwave state
Dropping
that you
theta.
want to be in. It took a hot minute, and she couldn't stay in it when she was meditating. She picked up a rope, and almost immediately and through the whole rope flow session did she stay in that brainwave state.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I think there's a piece, I think some of us are more willing to approach it from different angles. Like some of us are maybe more willing to sit in the body and feel it in stillness, and some of us might need that movement to be able to shift into it.
Yeah.
And like that part of the research I'm not super familiar with, but I do know that like, you know, we all kind of approach from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a time, like, I thoroughly believe all of this is very nuanced.
Yeah.
So you might be able to sit, let's just say, you might be able to sit and drop in, and like that's the thing for you.
Sure.
And then I can't, and I require the rope to have that drop in.
Yeah.
But I would even argue that we probably both need the other. You know, if I can't sit, then you should probably sit more. And like if you can't move and drop in, you should probably move more. The same way.
No, I agree. And I think there's a reason and purpose for both. You know, I think from the yoga lens, to sit in discomfort, to stay in discomfort, you know, if we start to talk the mental health side of things, like that is distress tolerance. That is you being able The reflection off the mat is you being able to be uncomfortable in a situation, breathe and hold your way through it.
Absolutely.
And for some people, I think that comes from a different training style background. Maybe it's the flow, maybe it's being able to like, all right, if I like hit my shoulder with the rope, or if I like drop it, if I'm out of sequence, how do I adjust and get back in?
Yeah.
That's that same skill that we reflect off the mat, but again, like just the different angle from it.
And maybe there is a tool, because we're talking like the other aspects of strength training or whatever practice, right? The rope is the tool we're using, the kettlebell is the tool we're using. Maybe in yoga, it's like, you know, our body and the earth. Because I always think of it as like, I'm just strengthening my relationship with the earth when I'm practicing yoga. Maybe that's the tool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think some teachers take that approach too, of like ground into the earth. I think for me, it's more, I'm just trying to like get in my body and be able to stay and like be okay in it. Like, you know, how you were talking about injury and stuff like that, and having to kind of reestablish again and again our relationship with our body of like, I have to check my head of like, look how you're talking to yourself. Like, okay, maybe we don't have to be so hard on yourself. And like through yoga, I can stay in it and learn to celebrate and appreciate, like, and it's kind of, for me personally, has been like a constant thing over different years and seasons of my life. And like this year I had some medical issues where I just, you know, you're like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe my body is doing this to me. You know, I take good care of it. Like for the most part, like I have a good time, but like I eat my greens.
You eat my greens.
You know, I eat my greens. I move my body. Like, and like yoga's and that approach of like, you kind of have to meet where you're at, like reacquaint yourself and find like love and acceptance. Yoga has helped me with that.
Yeah.
I do think strength training has also helped me with that, of like the edge of growth of like, okay, you still have to show up, just stay in it. And then being able to be like, that's amazing, you know, and take that shift in my own head of like, you know, not beating yourself up about it.
I think you read my mind right there. I was about to ask you, I was like, what is your purpose for it now? And then you kind of just went right into it. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, there it is.
Yeah. I mean, my purpose now too, like, and something I'm passionate about is helping other people learn how to feel okay and safe in their bodies. So like at my day job, you know, I do trauma-focused therapy with kids and teens.
Oh, wow.
And so, and like help work with their families. Experiences of trauma disrupt our sense of safety, dysregulate our nervous system. We go into that fight, flight, freeze response real quickly. And we kind of have to reestablish that sense of safety. Yeah. Which is why...
Do you do it through yoga?
No. I do it through like evidence-based interventions. Like, you know, I work at a clinic and, you know, I'm supervised because of where I'm at and my licensure as well. But I took the job because I could appreciate, okay, cool, if this is where you're at, what are skills that I have found in yoga, or what are skills that we practice in yoga of like breathing, of regulating your breath, of like being in your body, of being like, okay, this is a little uncomfortable, can I stay? And helping your brain and your body to understand how to stay when you're uncomfortable.
I love that.
Yeah.
What might a practice look like? So like, if you can share, if I came in and I'm like, I'm dealing with whatever the trauma, what are the practices and exercises you're doing with these people? Is it like talk? Is it?
Well, so we use like, it's a little different. You're kind of like, this is the direction I'd love to move in that I haven't, you know, there's not like a standard out there of like, if we talk from a research lens, like research requires clinical trials to be able to say, we know this works. It takes years and years to go from
trial and error.
Yeah. But also like through funding, through like, you know, measuring outcomes before they can say, hey, kind of use this as your standard. Here's the manual. Here's how to do it. And so like from the movement, mind, body kind of approach, you know, my job during the day, we do something called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. I do risk reduction through family therapy. We do a little bit of like an alternate for families therapy, which is, again, trauma-focused, working on relationships, communications, processing the experience. But what it looks like where my yoga practice is reflected is I take a very like somatic and like physiological experience approach with my kids when we work on regulating. So when we work on understanding your breath patterns, understanding how your emotions will change with every breath, change patterns, right? Your breathing patterns change with every emotion we experience. If I can get my kids to tune into that, even if they're not sure what they're feeling, they can at least start to shift their breath into a more helpful state. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, even if they don't know why their body is having this reaction, right? Because trauma, like, pretty much is like shakes up your nervous system. They can feel like they have tools to regulate. So it's very much from that lens of like, okay, here are breath patterns that we know, or like I'll practice meditation with my kids, or we'll do some stretches and we'll talk about, okay, like tension in your hips, tension in your shoulders and your chest. How do we move through it? How do we breathe into it? Mm-hmm. And then we continue kind of with the model. But I'd love to have a more integral mental health and movement approach where like we're moving your body, but then we're talking about what's been coming up for you.
Yeah.
Right? Or we're like challenging you to find an edge and where that has been like really difficult outside of like the movement practice in your like emotional life, or what's coming up with you with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super powerful, and I appreciate you doing that work, because that's like the bottom and the top of the totem pole. I've gone through the check system, so like most of my basis is the top of the totem pole is the psyche, and the bottom is like, they call it the slave joints, or like you're basically your body, your shoulders, your elbows, your all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And you're kind of just hitting the top two and trying, basically evening it all out.
Yeah.
And the big piece I hear from you a few times is the nervous system and that fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I had thought about this before, and it was a point I wanted to bring up here. I think how we train, as you're saying, how we move, helps us facilitate that response or reaction, right? This is why David Weck doesn't like training, like, he's really against training, like, really stiff.
Yeah.
Because then you're training freeze in your nervous system.
You're activating your nervous system. So you have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic, right? Mm-hmm. Sympathetic is like the activate, let's go, right? If there's a lion at the door, you want that to...
Fight, or freeze.
Fight, flight, freeze. Fawn is also one where you kind of like do what you got to do to be safe, right? It's one that socially sometimes people have a hard time accepting. But it's from that safety lens, right? Versus like, when you're parasympathetic, rest, digest, you're coming from that different state. Yeah, so if you're activating your nervous system, also, if we talk energetically, if I'm holding all the tension in my body, if I'm holding my breath, how am I supposed to move any of it out? Right? Like, energy isn't destroyed or created, so I'm just holding it. As opposed to, if I can relax and, like, move, I can shift where it is, or I can shift where it's stored.
Well, even if you're under tension, right?
Yeah.
Because there is a level of, like, I have to be tense in certain situations, especially in specifics to training. But it's just how are we here, or are we here, or are we here? And like that's creating a fight response.
That's where the flow comes into play.
That's where the flow comes into play.
Yeah,
but yoga's a little more majestic.
Yeah,
graceful, if you will.
Depending,
it can be, I guess.
I like those words.
Yeah,
I think of it too as like for some of those, there's a stability, there's a grounding sense that you need.
Well, you need it for like, I'm not putting 300 pounds on somebody's back or my back,
and then tell them to like
and coiling. I'm
chill.
Yeah. Right. But I think there's like,
it can't be the only thing. So this is where the balance comes into play.
Yeah. But I think the more you can create an awareness in like where that balance needs to be for an individual, the more you're empowering them of how to like, one, understand what's going on, two, be able to shift it, right? Like you're learning your body.
Like you're learning, in control of that.
Oh my God, I'm so tense. Okay, cool. How do I shift that?
Yeah.
What's going on with that? Why am I so tense?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's cool. I think it's such a beautiful and really powerful thing. And like, I was saying too, how I was talking with my coworker this week about, so one of a big principle in like clinical work and very common in like mental health field, cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Yeah. Thoughts affect what you feel and what you do, right? If I think about a situation in this way, I'm probably going to feel a certain way. I'm going to have these behaviors. Right. Yeah. So with my kids, we do this chicken nugget approach, which like...
I like the name of that.
Yeah.
Okay. I love chicken nuggets. I love where this is going.
Right? So. Like who doesn't? So like, okay. So you got your triangle, right? And, you find out tomorrow is chicken nuggets for lunch, and you're amped. So in your head, you're like, oh yeah, best day ever. I can't wait. You're feeling excited. You're feeling like good. You're probably also behaviorally moving through the world in a really good way, right? Like you're aware,
it's
you're
funny
grounded.
you bring this up because I thought of something funny for an experience I had. That's the opposite of chicken nugget day and feeling good about it. Actually, literally, like chicken nuggets triggered a trauma.
Really?
Yeah, I got bullied with chicken nuggets once.
Maybe like cheeseburger day.
So yeah,
So
maybe
if you brought this up and I was just like, well, no, chicken nuggets don't make me feel good.
Well, then we would kind of approach it a little differently, right? Because your thought... okay, so it's like just a hypothetical example to demonstrate the contract. But, okay, let's take where you're at, right? You're like, chicken nuggets. In your head, you're like, oh, no, not good.
No.
Mm-mm. So your feeling is probably what?
Oh, I mean, I love chicken nuggets, but the feeling is just, it's associated with that moment, which is just like embarrassment.
Okay, embarrassed, uncomfortable. So then the way that you're acting, right? The way you're interacting with your environment is going to be different, right?
Yeah.
So whereas like, whereas if you can understand, like, okay, so you have the spectrum of like, this is not good. If you can understand this is neutral, right? This is like, it's chicken nugget day. I'm not sure how that it's for me, but I understand that's because of my past experience. You might feel a little more neutral, a little more grounded. Maybe still a little bit embarrassed because of what it's bringing up, but you're going to move through and interact with the world differently. Whereas, like, maybe, I know for me, chicken nugget day, I'm like, heck yeah, I'm there, first in line, and I'm amped, right? So, but again, that's kind of the relationship we're talking about, like your mind, your body.
The thought and the association, and then how it presents in the body.
Yeah, and how you interact with your world.
Yeah.
So, Jordan and I were talking this...
Because of chicken nuggets.
It always
Sorry, I'm not going to let it go to the chicken nuggets.
I mean, yeah. Most of the time, kids are like, yeah, I love chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
I'm like,
no, I get it, but it's a great example. So it's just like, how do I think about chicken nugget day?
Yes.
Do I think like, oh my God, I'm going to eat some chicken nuggets? Or do I think this one-off event will ever happen again?
Yeah. And am I immediately getting uncomfortable?
Yeah, and then I'm not going to show up in the cafeteria because it's chicken nugget day.
Because you're like, nope, no.
Or maybe I get my chicken nuggets and I go somewhere else.
Or maybe you don't even go to school that day. Or maybe you don't even show up. Or maybe you like yell at one of your friends because you're like in that mood. But for me and her, like we're both trained, we have similar training. However, like I approach things and like personally, my awareness is like I'm noticing something in my body of what I'm feeling. And then I can check my head and I'm like, oh, you know where this is coming from? This is because, and I think that's why I fell into yoga why it's been such a powerful practice to me, because I get in my body and I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm hurt. Was that because like I'm really frustrated with things at work? Is it because I'm scared of like something happening in my family?
That's a result of yoga or within the practice of yoga?
The practice brings me into feeling and the awareness. From there, I can like unpack my thoughts. But some of us also approach from like, they're in their head and they're like, ooh, you know what? It's kind of like you're hearing your like kind of inner dialogue. And you're like, wow, this is bringing up a lot of feeling of like tension. And I'm acting it out in this way. This is how it's affecting my life.
So it's both.
It's just two approaches to the same goal of like understanding that insight and awareness. Some of us though, and then, you know, I'm wondering too, like maybe you guys feel you have one approach more than the other. Take it from the physical approach of like, what is going on? What am I feeling? Where is that coming from? Versus like, wow, I'm noticing this is what's going on in my head. What's going on in my body and how is that affecting things? Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And it actually brought something up for me. So I think this is
Is it about chicken nuggets? Because I'll have to
No,
tell you separately.
I mean, we can talk about that later because I think I might need to. But no, it's the duality of it. So with a lot of what I'm hearing with yoga or have heard with yoga and your experience is bringing in the conscious awareness.
Yeah.
And not that heavy lifting, you need conscious awareness, but I can't consciously be thinking. If I'm thinking, trying to snatch a 36 kilogram kettlebell, I'm like, I'm not going to get that bell up.
Right.
The moment I'm thinking about it.
Right.
But if I have to let go of the thoughts and focus on the task at hand. Mm-hmm. So there's the presence.
But I feel the same way when I practice yoga that you just described. Like, I'm not really
I'm
going
just saying the basis of what she is just describing versus my own, what this brought up for me right now in this moment.
That makes sense, yeah.
But for you,
I haven't had that with yoga. I would like to.
Have the experience of, like, being totally present.
Yeah, no, every time I've gone to, I've practiced, I'd say good amount of yoga. I'm not very well versed, but I haven't had that experience.
Yeah. But you have the experience of, like, you know, going to the gym, like picking up the kettlebell or whatever the workout is, where you have to get out of your head and you have to get into your body.
Yeah.
And then also when we get into our body and we start shifting our breathing patterns, when we shift our movement, like, again, when you're finding that edge, when you're doing discomfort, when you're like taking a new movement, or you're going for the last set that you don't know you're going to make it through, right? Like, we've all had that moment. I can walk out right now.
Yeah.
But you get through it and it shifts, and then we can kind of unpack the other stuff.
Yeah.
But I will say too, like, especially when I've gone through like breakups and like dating and stuff, I end up at the gym trying to push that edge versus at yoga.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting, because we talk about this all the time at the gym. Like, everybody's there for mental health, and like the people that, you know, like me, who have 20 plus years of experience in the gym, we've known that for a long time.
Yeah.
Everybody's in the gym for mental health, and it's like, we have, you know, when you're doing your pull-ups or whatever your exercise is, right? You just have to be present, and it's that mind-muscle connection brings you into the present moment, and is just a wonderful thing to do.
It's incredible, because if you don't, you're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
you're gonna get hurt, or you're gonna drop
but it's
that.
kind of the same thing with the vinyasa. You know, like, if you're telling people to balance on their left foot and right arm while kicking their leg out and looking up at the sky, they have to be present.
Well, yeah, and I feel like I say this all the time whenever we do a headstand practice. So I'm like, if you jump, you will absolutely mess up your neck, your back. It's not safe, and you have to be grounded to get up there with control. I think too, like, it's transformational and a beautiful thing when you have that control and you're like, okay, cool, I'm in it. And I think that's what, like, I think weight training and like the kettlebell work and all of that can teach you too, is like gaining that control and like feeling empowered in how to handle it. And yoga can do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're willing to like step up and do it again and again.
Yeah.
Well, our like whole idea with this podcast and naming it the Body Mind Project was that, like, to like talk about how the body and the mind are one.
Constantly.
And it's like, no, you know, it's the same thing. And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about today a little bit, or leading into that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know, what you're experiencing in your body is a reflection of what's happening in your mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, what you're experiencing in your body might be manifesting from your mind or another place in your body.
Yeah. I mean, and too, like, if we were to like look at the mental health side, right? Like, your body language, you know, someone with depression might present, it's hard to tell sometimes, but also they might present with different body language or have different sensations in their body related to those feelings.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why this topic is so nuanced, I think.
Yeah.
Because I thought about like instances of where I've experienced depression and other stuff, and some you know, you're shut off, you're closed, physically closed, and don't want to. But then there's other instances where you're like, oh yeah, you want to do something? Yeah, let's go do something. And then like you're always trying to keep yourself busy, and then when you're alone, that's when it all comes in, and everybody thinks you're fine on the surface because they're like, oh man, this guy's happy to go. This girl's happy to do anything, and you know they like helping others, and you know it's so nuanced, so nuanced.
It's hard. I think, you know, it's hard for people in that state to know what to do, to how to get help, and where to go. And when you get distracted or when you're keeping yourself busy, I think this is like they talk about in yoga too all the time, is like, get quiet so you can see what's coming up. That's what you're talking about too. Like if you're going through your day and everything's fine, you're showing up to work, great. You get home though and like you completely collapse. You have no energy. Like you feel hopeless. Like it's hard to do your dishes. It's hard. You know, I think depression too, we undermine how difficult and how much energy it takes to do very simple things, right? It's like you are moving in super slow motion through concrete. You know, it takes so much just to brush your teeth some days or get out of bed. And those moments where we slow down and when we have that awareness, those things sometimes come up too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's wild.
What Yeah, let's talk about like I guess maybe your yoga teaching experience and like where you see that going.
Oh,
I want to hear about that. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. How'd you get started teaching yoga? Like, what was the 200-hour
I was
training?
at uh, Charleston Power Yoga when they
Yeah.
were downtown.
Hmm.
This is years ago. Um, and I think I was doing their work exchange and somehow ended up with like a little extra money in my bank account. And it was the early bird pricing. And I was like, wait, I could do that. And I did. And it's beautiful. And it's, you know, it was so powerful for me, that awareness of like, wait, oh, maybe I'm not really happy at this place in life.
Mm.
And it's cool. I don't know if you like, when I plan for classes, I like to write down
Hmm.
either like the theme or the sequence or things like that. But I have my old notebook from when I did my teacher training, and I was going back the other week and I saw like my dreams of grad school, and like I was like, look into LPC, MSW, PhD programs, like figure out how you can pay for that. Like I
Yeah.
saw those same goals, and that was really cool to go back and
Yeah.
see, because I feel like from there it opened all the opportunities I needed to take that path forward.
Hmm.
And so I did the teacher training. I took over this like outdoor yoga business, and that was so fun and powerful, and
Yeah.
like running a team and scheduling classes and the freedom. Um, and I worked at a couple studios in the area that helped me kind of like make a little extra money and get that side hustle
Hmm.
going. And then my day job was working in a research study, so it was
Hmm.
alcohol research.
Mm.
So we were doing a medication study to see if it helped with people with alcohol use disorder and PTSD that were experiencing withdrawal, if it helped them to continue to abstain.
Interesting. What was the medication?
Gabapentin.
Okay.
It's a gabapentin for relapse
Yeah.
prevention. You can Google it. My name will be on the paper.
Yeah. No big deal.
Ah, look at you.
No big deal.
Wow.
But it was cool. But it was when I started to hear things and start to connect like people's experiences with like what was coming up at yoga, or like
Yeah.
being in the body and those challenges. And then I'd be teaching, and I remember talking to a student that was like, I can't. I'm having such a hard time with these things, and like part of me was like, oh, this is mental health.
Yeah.
But they were coming to me as a yoga teacher and approaching me, and I was like, I knew I didn't have the training to offer the help they needed. I knew that to offer the help, I needed to go back to school.
Like that's what you wanted. Like I guess it clicked for you. Like I want to help these people,
Yes.
but I probably can't serve them best just as talking to as a yoga teacher.
I mean, you could in a
Yeah.
lot of ways if they
Yeah.
found it helpful and accessible.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just depends on the depth of it.
It depends on the
Yeah.
I think it depends on your values. I think also like for me,
Sure.
working on the research side and working in like understanding why we have interventions that are the way they are, I appreciated that to some extent too. And I was like, no, I don't want to just kind of like go through, I want something that I know is evidence based,
Mhm.
that will be helpful, and I want the training so I don't, step outside my scope.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then
Yeah, that makes sense.
kind of found my way into the social work program, over other options, and
Mhm.
it worked. It fit too. Like I could keep my day job and went to school on Saturdays, so I was like, I guess this is it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's cool.
so it's been cool to kind of watch it fall into place. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And here you are teaching
I know.
yoga.
I love and I had taken a break from teaching yoga, and someone in the neighborhood, right when the studio opened, was like, hey, I think I'm going to teach a Wednesday morning. Do you have any interest in maybe teaching or just being able to sub? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I really felt stretched thin. I kind of lost my values. I was kind of teaching in ways where I was just showing up at the studio and not a part of the community. For me, I noticed that difference in like, I didn't know the students. I didn't know the connection.
Yeah.
The value was different. And so even that, she kind of connected me, the owner and I connected personally, and it just kind of opened into place. And then the schedule opened into place, and I don't think I would normally teach if you asked me 4 years ago if I'd be teaching Tuesday, Thursdays at 6:30 a.m., I'd be like, I don't think so. Like, I always taught Friday nights and Sunday mornings. Those were my spots in the schedule.
Okay.
But I love it. And I love starting. And I love the community. And I love what it's been.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did start there because I, did like the inaugural teacher training there, right?
Yeah,
and I was like so
the
new
big...
to yoga at the time. And being able to go to like the morning classes, I learned so much from y'all. Like you and Melissa, like you guys do like the ladder sequencing. And for me, that's when it clicked because I was like, I was like, how am I going to copy what Timmy does for to like create my own sequences? Like my brain doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But then it clicked because it's like this ladder sequencing thing. That's how my brain works. I need like a framework to follow.
Yeah.
And then I can, just like build from there. And like that's when everything clicked. It was like seeing how y'all did the ladder sequencing.
Yeah. So Nick, have you taken like a class like that? Do you know what we're talking about?
Class? You do that all the time?
I pretty much do ladder sequencing every time I teach yoga.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to his class.
Not always, but
once.
Hey, the honesty is
not
there.
A big yoga over here.
Not a big yoga.
And again, like some days it lands, some days some season of your life it might make more sense than others. I took Timmy's classes for a long time. When I first moved down here, I went like that whole summer when I first moved down here. Yeah,
because you were working right next door. Yeah,
2-3 days a week all the time. That's where I first met him.
Yeah.
Was at her 4th of July class in 23.
Fun.
Yeah, and it was
packed out. Yeah, you were breathing down someone else's neck.
That's right.
Yeah. You were like,
I'm dripping all over everybody.
Yeah. You're watching like the nose drip across the mat onto someone else's.
Oh,
but I worked at a studio and they had They had like kind of structured from a franchise. They like wanted us all to teach ladder sequence, so it's different than my teacher training.
Yeah.
But what I loved is one, the flow it got me into because it was like you introduce some shapes and then you build on them. Mm-hmm. And then I started to know where I was going. And I think for me as a teacher, I want to empower my students. I want them to like lean into their body and lean into that feeling, feel accessible, feel good, feel like, okay, even if I'm not in a Birds of Paradise, I'm working on my bind and it's the path there. So I love the idea of introducing the shapes on the path because I think it empowered me as a student. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think empowers my students now too. I haven't asked them, but
I think the numbers
probably double check before
the numbers, like the amount of people that come to your class frequently, that speaks for itself.
Yeah. So what is the future like for Emily? So you mentioned
what's your plan?
What's your 10-year plan?
I don't have a plan. My dream has been to really start better integrating this. So I'll finish my independent licensure this summer, and I'd love to shape my own, mental health, physical wellness practice and toyed with different ideas of what it could look like. Really getting people both into their bodies and doing the, mental health, whether it's supportive counseling or like a specific treatment, but honestly integrating it into the same space. So your appointment, how I've kind of played with the idea of it, at least for right now, is the idea that say we had a meeting once a week. Some days we're moving and breathing. Some days we're working on that piece. Yeah. But you have that accountability there. You have the structure and support. And I have the training where I know I can offer it to you. But I think sometimes they're so isolated. I think what's hard about our healthcare system and the mental health piece is it can be hard to afford. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you run it.
Kind of becoming accessible.
Yeah.
And
So I don't
insurance conversation.
Insurance. So. That is one we can leave.
We're not. I know.
I love that.
I don't even know why I said it. I could have just left it out. We all do. We all do.
I can't even.
Yeah.
There's something. Some of it is heartbreaking though. That like in the sense of like people that need help can't always afford it. People that can afford it also have insurance that won't cover it. Like we put people in these weird pigeonholes. So. I don't know where to make that accessible or where to start to bridge that, but I do know that there is something to be said about teaching people how to be in their body and like let's connect that with the mental health in a way that you feel better when you leave.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's kind of, we'll see. You know, I'd love to get teenagers. Like, oh my gosh. Like, can you imagine being 16 again and actually feeling good in your body?
Yeah. No.
That was going to be my answer.
There's so much, but when you look at this generation and like what they're being raised around, you know, I don't know a ton about the research of social media and the impact, but I do know that when we grew up, when we were in high school, right, we compared ourselves to our immediate surrounding, which was school, town, right? Probably didn't have, maybe had a Facebook page.
Yeah, we weren't like globally connected like
No, MySpace.
MySpace.
I had Instagram in high school.
Oh, so you're very young.
He's a young man. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Only a few years ago.
Okay, so
relax.
Instagram.
Let's relax.
Listen, kids, it was a big deal when you had your top 8 on MySpace.
Oh, yeah. I don't even think I had a MySpace.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I made one.
So Tom wasn't your first friend.
Tom was the guy.
That's got to be a generational difference. That's got to be like a hard line.
Yeah, MySpace was definitely
you guys are
around
about the same
when I
age,
was.
so
Yeah.
I'm an old man. I'm 32 years old.
Not old.
Okay, I'm 32 too.
It's like 5 years off.
Yeah, but you're a young 32.
My birthday's coming up. We just keeps going.
Honestly, I always forget. I was under the impression you were my age.
Thank you.
So, and I always
It's
feel
the
like
yoga.
he's
I think
under
it's
the impression
it's the
he's
yoga
my age.
or it's the hair.
Yeah.
Maybe a combination. Yeah.
It's a good combo. But you know, if you come back, okay. So when we were in high school,
a couple years ago.
Yeah, just the other day.
Yeah.
When you it's normal to compare yourself at that age. Developmentally, there's certain things that are appropriate.
Yeah, of course.
You know, you're learning who you are. You're building that sense of self. But it was who was immediately around you. It might have been your neighborhood. It might have been your school. Versus today, when you open your phone, you're comparing yourself to everyone, and and we can talk about the filtered world and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the scope of how many people you're comparing yourself to or measuring ourselves against is significant.
I feel like it's also creating unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Of what the world provides and what kind of life you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, like the connection to your phone as opposed to, you know, personal connection, like learning how to make eye contact, learning how to, when you send an email, learning how to introduce yourself.
How much eye contact is too much eye contact.
Yeah. Or like personal space, all these things. But, you know, there's social skills and stuff that also are difficult and feel like it is safer. It might feel safer behind a phone, but when we lean into that, we perpetuate that. You don't learn how to tolerate the discomfort. That there's a difference between discomfort that's unsafe versus discomfort that you don't know.
Yeah.
And the brain will go to the familiar, what is it, like the devil I know versus devil I don't know. We default back to it. So it's natural to lean into it, but the more you're aware of that, the more we can create the understanding of like, wait, it's not unsafe to call someone on the phone. Like, it just might feel a little weird at first, but actually you get your...
better in my opinion.
It's crazy. It might take 30 text messages over multiple days to get the same thing you can get out in a 60-second phone call.
Yes. And also just like the tone and things like that. Like if I text, like, there's a really good Key and Peele skit about it. Did y'all ever see it?
I know which one you're talking about. I can't remember what they say.
The one is like, he's like,
I don't care, and he's
whatever. Like, I don't care. He's like, whatever? He's like, I'm going over.
But it's really whatever, you know.
All those things. So like, yeah, I would love to see that. Like for the kids I work with too, I would love nothing more than like for them to just feel okay in their own body.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's invaluable. And I love that, this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's admirable.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
It is.
I think we all do it in our own ways too. Like the way that you work with someone, on strength training, on understanding their body, on meeting where they're at, the way that you do through your own teaching.
I know our basis is through a movement modality, but I think even just the way we show up in the world and present ourselves exemplifies that.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
How can people find more of you? How can people experience your yoga?
Yeah.
I teach at James Allen Yoga on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:30. So just get up.
Get
up
Be
and show up.
oh gosh, I know it's hard. And then I also know, like, when I move in the morning, God, I have the best day.
Yeah, it's always worth it.
It's always worth it.
You might look at that snooze.
It's always worth it.
Might look really attractive to hit that snooze button.
I snooze all. I literally.
I'm a big snoozer.
I set my alarm for 5:30. I snooze it once, and then I get up.
Okay.
I have a cup of coffee. Scout sits on my lap.
Sounds like
She's
a
my
nice
dog.
morning, yeah.
But she'll like come and sit with me. We sit on the floor in the kitchen. It's our thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, and then we'll see kind of what these next couple months in the future holds of how I can create this. And also, I think for me, I'm still trying to figure out, will other people value it? Like, will it be?
I think yes.
Okay. I'm getting a lot of from people that I've shared like things that I'm passionate about with. Yeah. I think my challenge personally is I'm like, I don't really know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm toying with the same stuff right now, yeah.
And you're kind of like, how do I create it?
Well, yeah, just we'll just try and, something will stick to the wall.
Everyone keeps telling me
I think that's
just
what
like
everybody's doing right
Yeah.
now. I think that's life, but you don't know what it's going to look like.
But I love to see
Did you know you were
because
going to be a
it's
yoga teacher doing what you're doing now?
No, I never thought I'd be that cool. Like,
Right.
are you kidding?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are cool.
Yeah, I've heard great things. You're meeting those expectations.
Cool, really.
Yes, like I never thought of myself like that. Like I was it took me so long to feel good in my own skin. And again, it's like that practice. Yoga brought so much to me, but it's like
Also teaching yoga, like it takes a lot of confidence to get up in front of 25 people and lead them through a flow. Like,
yeah. You forget. I forget that. At some point.
It's like second nature to you right now.
And knowledge too. You got to keep people safe.
Kind of. Yeah.
And that breeds the confidence too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, having the knowledge, knowing I know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think even too like learning how to create that thing in the space. Like for me, shifting music that felt true to me, that felt right, as opposed to like I wanted to be cool and fun and look a certain way. And anyhow, finding out how to stay true to who I am and create that in the spaces. But that's where I'm at right now, and we'll see where it grows. And then I'd love to see more. I'd love to see more strength integrated. I'd love for people to engage as opposed to just have the mobility and have both. And like, could you imagine like, that's kind of my personal mission and passion is just for like people to feel good in their own body. And how do we do that through movement?
Yeah.
Well, I hope that maybe all three of us can team up on something at some point.
Yeah. I think
big old workshop.
I think we've got
big old workshop.
I think we've got some real fun ideas. I think there's a lot of ways to break it down. I think there's ways we can make it accessible. Mm-hmm. Like I'm always a fan of, if someone were to approach me and say I can't afford it, cool, what can we do?
Yeah,
exactly.
If they were like, and I've had conversations with Timmy in the past too when I offered a teen yoga series of like, hey, if someone comes to me and they can't afford it, here's my ideas. What do you think?
I love it.
Yeah, we'll keep it going. I would say, if anybody's looking to practice yoga at James Island Yoga, Emily is by far one of the best teachers there.
I appreciate
No
it.
joke. You're like probably the most underrated too. Even though like 30 people show up to your class every time.
That doesn't sound underrated to me.
Seriously, like there should be 60 people there.
Thank you. I think for me, it's been a space where I've personally grown. I've cried on that floor so many times. I've let it out. I've been in it, and I think we walk together in it. So I appreciate it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm excited to see what comes
I
next.
know. We'll figure. Yeah.
Not just here, but with the ideas that we have. But I mean, just with your dream.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I love what you guys are doing of like having conversations about this. Of like, you're talking about bridging the gap of things that. Kind of what we've been talking about today too is like we know these things are all kind of true, but we need to bring it all together and like create the connection
and
of like
here are your options.
And here's options.
Like there's a path forward too.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It was cool.
Namaste.
Episode 3, baby.
Episode 3.
Let's go.
3 is a real special number.
It is.
Yeah.
Good number.